I'm glad to say that Minister Zeev Elkin has arrived, and he is the Minister of the Environment and of Jerusalem Affairs, and he is one of the people who jumped into the water in support of the application of sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, and is one of the best public diplomats that defends this approach. Minister Elkin. And my good friend, Minister Yariv Levin, asked me to apologize. We were both cabinet sessions until now, so only one of us has managed to get here, and since our views are quite similar, I will try to represent him as well. I belong to the disappearing breed of cabinet ministers who don't talk about cabinet, closed cabinet meetings of this type, because I believe that that's the right way to behave. But for the subject at hand, we are here at the 4th Sovereignty Conference, and I am proud at the honor of being invited to participate. This isn't the first conference that I'm speaking at, and I think that indeed, as I noted in light of the event that just occurred when I got up to speak, clearly this conference, the Sovereignty Conference, have been very successful in bringing the discourse on sovereignty in Judea Samaria to the forefront and making it a major factor in the political discussions in the State of Israel. That is indeed a great accomplishment of recent years, and I would like to congratulate all those who are involved, who took this idea from the beginning. And at that time, it looked like something very remote from possibility, but they believed it was the right time to place it at the center of the discourse and at the center of the stage, and they have indeed succeeded. And we learned, sometimes from negative examples, that sometimes things that start at the center of discussion often brings results. And if the extreme left have succeeded, at least on the level of the discourse, in their project of a Palestinian state and the whole idea of Oslo, which began for things that were so much on the edge, they were against Israeli law, and sadly they became a reality. Happily, a Palestinian state has not, but the idea has been part of our lives for more than 20 years. So I'm a great believer here too, that an idea that is taking root in more and more hearts, we are now settling in people's hearts, as it were, and this idea ultimately will bring about practical results on the ground, because that is the fate of great ideas and of the people who advance them. So a great vote of congratulations to you for this great effort. I looked at some of the subjects. I was supposed to speak earlier in the conference, and now I'm in the middle, but I prepared my remarks for something to be said at the beginning, and I looked at the program and I saw that some of the discussion, which I would imagine part of it has already been held, was among other things over the question of what is better, sovereignty all at once or in stages. And I must say that I have a very clear approach on this matter, and I've been consistent for quite some time, and I spoke about this at the first Sovereignty Conference, and my mind hasn't changed, even though I will conclude my remarks with some words of warning, but my basic approach has not changed, and I think that the idea of moving ahead in stages is the right thing to do, and it is a revolution that has occurred in the Israel right wing, which was once afraid of taking that move and is now an idea that is shared very widely. And I said 2 weeks ago in another place, the fact that Bezalel Smotrich is the person who submitted the law of to apply sovereignty to Ma'ale Adumim as the first step, that's the sign of this revolution. I think that's the right thing to do. I said that on that subject, I think we should learn from the Palestinians, who with that salami approach achieved quite a bit in the past 20 years, and I think that we should also move ahead to fulfill our national aspirations in that way. And so that anywhere we can apply sovereignty in Judea, Samaria, we should. It's really something that we must do. This is the time to do it at this time. This is the task of the hour, perhaps now more than ever. And the second thing that stands out in the program, and I think the organizers gave it expression when they called it sovereignty with responsibility. That's the big question. What happens with the population that lives in the territory upon which we apply sovereignty? We tend often to talk about the fulfillment of our national aspirations and the application of sovereignty in the places where we believe over all of Judea and Samaria ultimately, but usually we tend to evade the question of what will happen with the Arab population living in Judea and Samaria, because that is not a simple question. It's quite a difficult challenge. And people say, why contend with a difficult challenge if you can avoid it? And I would like to congratulate the organizers because that they didn't evade this difficult question, and there isn't a single answer. There are different models and different ideas, but I think the Israeli right owes itself a very in-depth discussion in order to hone and distill this idea that we are rallying around, and that's why the discourse on this subject is the right thing to do. I think that the discussion also requires us to look squarely at the place where we have applied sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, and that is Jerusalem. I won't expand on that. There is the conference of Be'Sheva on the subject of Jerusalem, and I will be speaking about that subject there. But indeed, I think that the whole discussion on the question of what the right thing to do is and how to resolve the challenge of the Arab population living in the territory over which we want to apply sovereignty, we have to examine the models that we are discussing based on what happened in East Jerusalem, and I will expand on this more tomorrow, but and I would like to say that sadly we applied sovereignty to East Jerusalem, but we haven't actually applied it in many different areas, and all those who believe in sovereignty in Judea and Samaria must be prepared for the practical aspects of the application of sovereignty in East Jerusalem, with everything that involves, including actual control, real control and governance, and everything that involves on the one hand, and also with genuine investments. It is a challenge of the right far more than of the left, and I consider myself, as the Minister for Jerusalem Affairs, one of the and we are ready to apply sovereignty with full responsibility and everything that implies. A further point that I would like to relate to today is related and also not related to this subject of the population. And I think that the Almighty taught us in this area, in this holy land, that many things happen to us even when we're not ready for them and without planning them. We returned to Jerusalem without planning for it. Nobody planned in 1967 to capture Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem. And if it were up to us, we wouldn't have reached that great victory in the Six-Day War and recaptured these lands that are so important to our heritage. And a lot of important things happened in this place, not only because of us, and perhaps but because of the other side, actually. And I am among those who think that even if we are today somehow trying to evade the application of sovereignty, because it is indeed a big change and a revolution in our discourse and in our actions, and also vis-a-vis the international community, like it or not, the Arabs of Judea and Samaria will put that challenge before us big time, because in my opinion, and I've said this in the past and I say this again and again, I believe that the years or months of the Palestinian Authority are numbered, and it will not survive the day after Abu Mazen. And that's why those who don't want to contend with the need to apply sovereignty will have no alternative, and they will see that this is something that could happen tomorrow or in a month or two or maximum a year or two, and that will require the state of Israel to apply sovereignty over Judea and Samaria and contend with a new reality there. And that's why, in my opinion, the attempts at artificial resuscitation of the Palestinian Authority that we have become so accustomed to, this pattern in the past 20 years, will not succeed, and we will have to become accustomed to a new reality which will not be easy. It will challenge us, including the communities in Judea and Samaria first and foremost, but ultimately it will require the state of Israel to do great things. And to conclude, I think that in this important, so important time that we are living in reshaping the discourse regarding Judea and Samaria, but because of these changes that are occurring among the Arabs of Judea and Samaria, and the changes in the internal discourse here in Israel, and also because of the change that occurred in the United States with the new administration, it is important at this time to see the opportunity, and it is a great opportunity to take the idea of sovereignty from the concept to the practice, and this is a critical time for that. But we must also be aware of the dangers, and I think a few words should be said about that too. At this time, in particular, I think to advance sovereignty in stages, and I am one of the greatest believers in that idea, could challenge us quite a bit too, because all kinds of ideas could emerge that sovereignty in stages should be accompanied by us conceding parts of the land of Israel. And I think it's very important to distinguish between these two things. We may find ourselves challenged by ideas of this kind, in particular in this new age, and I think that it is very important to distinguish the opportunities, but at the same time to be aware of the dangers and to know how to contend with them and to know how to distinguish between those two things. Sovereignty in stages everywhere in Israel where it's possible, in the land of Israel, conceding our rights and national aspirations over all parts of the land of Israel in return for sovereignty? No, absolutely not. I think that is the formula that we must bear in mind. And to sum up, I would like once again to congratulate everyone in this conference who has organized this conference, who are willing to contend with these difficult issues, the difficult issues that sovereignty poses to us. And I can promise you that I, together with my colleagues who view themselves as the faithful emissaries of this wonderful audience that has filled this audience to overflowing, perhaps more than conferences of Haaretz. I think that the idea of sovereignty touches a lot of people, those people who have come here and people who are taking an interest in this subject, and that itself proves how this idea is unstoppable. And ultimately, this great idea will be taken and with God's help will be turned into the reality of our lives. Thank you.